time has come. You heard from him earlier in the show. But Kaiden Smith, Kato, for those of y'all that are new to the show, we refer to him as. Kato, it's time, man. About to do the hypothetical ACC draft, drafting as the Big Ten and the SEC. So this is an anticipatory hypothetical draft. If the ACC is in fact going to blow up like we think it's going to, the Big Ten and the SEC are the two super conferences that we're expecting to clean house here. So we're going to do a 6-round draft here and pick and choose who we would take as these respective conferences off the board to join our own hypothetical conference as the Big Ten and the SEC. How are you feeling? Like, how are vibes for you right now?
Vibes are great, JD. I'm excited about this exercise. We were talking about wanting to bite a little bit more of the apple here when it comes to the ACC and Florida State and Clemson and what they have coming up in their future with or without the ACC. And I think that this is kind of the best way to go about it. I think this is one of the things where there's going to be some blue chip prospects. And then after that, it might be interesting to see what we prioritize as we play commissioner for these two leagues and what could potentially transpire. I'm glad we're only doing 6 rounds. I'm not trying to sit here and figure out where Wake Forest is going to end up in this thing if hypothetically the ACC imploded. But I think there's a lot to work with here, and I'm definitely excited, and I'm definitely curious what the people think as well about our new look conferences once we both have our new additions to the league. So I'm pumped about it, man. I'm excited to be commissioner for a day.
Couple of things to add to what you just said. There may very well be a couple of teams here that are package deals. Like we saw when the Big 12 came together. You had Arizona State go together, and USC, UCLA go together. So in this exercise, we're not drafting more than one at a time, but still, with that being said, this could be how it works. This could be how this whole thing shakes out. And even more context here. If you're like, why are they drafting the ACC? Settlement came out between Clemson and Florida State and the ACC essentially saying, hey, you can get out in 2030 for less than $100 million. So we're assuming now Clemson and Florida State will say, cool, here's the money, we're out, as soon as the Big Ten media rights deal comes up in 2030. And if you subtract a Clemson and Florida State, then you probably, I think, subtract some Jenga blocks to probably have the conference be in a tricky spot. So we don't wish that upon them, but even with that being said, we will take a quick anticipatory moment of silence for the ACC before we draft their teams. Okay, here we go. Kaiden, we'll do a coin flip, true to our draft format here. You were going to be drafting as the Big Ten. We got a quarter here. You got George Washington's heads, and you got Anna Mae Wong as our tails here for the other side of the quarter. You calling heads or tails here?
I'm calling Anna Mae. Give me tails.
Anna Mae. Here we go. I'm going to flip it and then do the whole deal where you put it on your arm. So let's see.
Don't drop that thing. Ooh, crisp.
It is tails. Kaiden
Petiti.
You have Kato Petiti. You have won
his first win.
First one down, brother. The floor is yours. You are now on the clock. Who are you taking with your first pick here in this hypothetical ACC draft?
JD PicKell, you can't see my computer over here, but I'm looking at a map of where the Big Ten schools are located right now. And we have a pretty widespread net here. Everywhere from Rutgers and Piscataway all the way to Seattle, Washington, down to Los Angeles. We have a lot of ground to cover here. And I think my conference, the Big Ten, in this situation has opened up the floodgates as far as a national geographical footprint. And with that in mind, with my first overall pick, I'm going to take the Florida State Seminoles.
Oof, good pick.
Broaden the footprint even more. Now we have all 4 corners of the nation touched. Florida State, I don't have to really explain them very much as far as their prestige. This is a team that's won a national championship in our lifetime. This is just a classic brand. We can't wait to see what we do in every sport, really, when it comes to the Big Ten. The travel has already been knocked out the window. This team's closer to Rutgers than some of the teams on the West Coast and some of the other geographical kind of. We can stay in a time zone, you know what I mean? We have some room to work with here. I think it speaks for itself. I think this was my clear 1-1. I think regardless of who I had pick, it's a little bit different. I think if you're the SEC because they don't have any ground laid in the state of Florida. But yeah, in this draft, welcome to the Big Ten, Florida State Seminoles.
Here we go, man. Hey, that's a great pick by you. I want you to know too that was also my 1-1.
Nice.
So great pick. Great minds think alike. I hate that you took them. But I do think that that's going to be, I mean, dude, seeing the Florida State Seminoles with a Big Ten patch on their jerseys, that's just It's going to be bizarre.
We got the Chief and Renegade just coming in hot in the Big Ten. I mean, what more could you ask for?
Dude, think about the flight, too. If you are flying from Los Angeles out to Tallahassee to play a game, I guess you're already doing, if you're the ACC, Coral Gables to Cal Berkeley, but I digress. So this feels pretty straightforward for me. Maybe in the real happenings of things, these teams would be a package deal. I don't know if that's the case, but I'll go ahead and take Clemson. All right, so Clemson, I know that the Gamecocks are going to be upset with me, but we're going to take you as a part of the SEC now. I'm hoping and praying that Dabo is still the head coach there, so we keep that brand of the Tiger Paw where it has been across college football. And that makes the last weekend of the regular season a conference matchup. So South Carolina, Clemson getting after it in the SEC for the. There's no more at-large impact there for either side when it comes to bolstering their resume for the future of the college football playoff. But with that being said, I will take Clemson. I like the brand. I like where they are trending, and I think they fit in nicely, geographically speaking, for the SEC. Again, I don't think South Carolina, the Gamecocks, are too happy with me for adding them. But listen, if we are drafting based on what the ACC has available, we would feel foolish to not take Dabo and company. So Clemson, welcome to the SEC. It just means more. Here we go, baby.
I think it's an interesting conversation too about Clemson joining the SEC, just because I think it's very clear that the SEC is pretty picky about who they want joining their conference. We're going to do this draft, and I don't think there's 6 teams, quite frankly, in the ACC, unless we just get to full conference realignment, Big Ten, SEC, looking like the AFC, NFC, and they're both just going to allocate a bunch of teams. I think if it doesn't come to that, the SEC will be picky. Greg Sankey's been asked multiple times about adding other teams to the fold, and he's like, we're good. We took Oklahoma and Texas. We don't need numbers to be strong here. But I think Clemson is one of those schools, along with Florida State, obviously, they'd make that exception for. And I think it's a lot easier to see it because they already have a school in the state of South Carolina. And I think the interesting thing, too, is about the rivalry aspect of this. If it gets to this in the future, the SEC has the potential with a lot of these teams in the ACC to kind of loop up some rivalries here. When you talk about ACC and SEC rivals, talk beyond football as well and basketball. It's always a good thing to have too, across all sports. So I think that's a great fit. I think the Palmetto Bowl becoming a in-conference game just adds juice to that. I don't think the fans would be as mad as you think. I think they'd be a little bit happy with that game, maybe having some even more increased stakes. So I think it'd be a good time. I think it's a great fit personally. I think pick 1 and pick 2, I think we're kind of the go-to picks, but I think overall from a fit perspective, we're doing good things over here.
Layups. Okay, so that's going to balloon the Big Ten up to 24 teams when we get to 6.
Fat conference.
The SEC, we're not believing in portion control for either of these conferences. I guess that's why they're the super conferences. The SEC would get to 22. So who is going to be your next pick, Cato, to join the Big Ten? If you're selecting from we're saying everything's available here in the ACC. So who are you taking for your next pick?
I think just given what the strategy is that I already have going for me here, it's just from a fit standpoint. I'm running up to the commissioner. I'm putting this pick in as fast as I can, and give me the Miami Hurricanes.
Wow. Okay.
Now we have 2 teams set up in the state of Florida, so it's not just weird to have one there. We have 2 big time teams in the state of Florida. You look at a team like a Florida that's in the SEC, and they're kind of the only school there. Well, now we have more schools in the state of Florida than the SEC. I think that's a nice little tip of the hat, a little feather in the cap, if you will, of the Big Ten. And I think, like I mentioned, just looking at the map of this all, we have Washington and Oregon on one side of the country. We have Miami and Florida State on the other side, kind of adjacent from each other, and everything in between. Now we're going to just be able to attack and conquer. I guess I'm looking at this almost like a risk, like one of those games where you take over the entire country or the world. I'm looking at it from a map perspective, but it's Miami. It's a big time brand. I think we see them in the NIL era continue to flex their muscles as far as what they can do, as far as acquiring quarterback talent. We have the Cavender twins down there. We're going to have a lot going for us. I think just being this kind of program in the NIL era, I think it's a perfect fit for a big time conference. And I think welcome to the Big Ten. It's going to be hard to be playing up north in East Lansing and in Ann Arbor when it comes to November games. But I think the Hurricanes are built for it. So welcome to the Big Ten.
Man, okay, so you went state of Florida, which is actually, when you talk about the footprint, dude, the Big Ten's going to have a pretty good foot in the door for recruiting in the state of Florida. You can now make that pitch to guys in state if you're Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. Hey, come play here. You're probably going to go home at least once a year, maybe twice if the schedule shakes out that way. I mean, it's not a bad strategy.
Miami and Los Angeles, two big time markets that we have now to our name. So I like where we're at right now. For sure.
Good spot, man. Good spot. Okay, well, I'm going to go I'm torn here between two picks, so I hope you don't take my pick that I don't take, which I guess is how drafts work. I'm going to go North Carolina next. Ooh. Now, I'm taking North Carolina next, and it has nothing to do with Chapel Bill, though I do appreciate what he's doing there right now, even though I'd love to see him on Hard Knocks. This is a brand play. This is, I hate to say it, this is a bit of a basketball play for me. I think that UNC, from a football perspective, what they have been before, they've shown they can be a little bit spunky, be a little bit spry. So if you get the right head coach in there, I think there's resources around North Carolina that can be activated. So we got Clemson and North Carolina both joining the SEC. Also, geographically, it makes sense. Like, I mean, anytime there's a Waffle House, within a stone's throw, I'd have to imagine that's the case in Chapel Hill or around the Chapel Hill metro area. You belong in the SEC. So North Carolina, welcome to the SEC. You will be in there with some other teams in the Carolinas now. So we're kind of both taking a similar approach geographically. You're kind of locking down the state of Florida, trying to get my foot in the Carolinas a little bit here. And, I feel good about where we're at right now. Okay, interesting. So Clemson, North Carolina in the SEC, and Florida State and Miami in the Big Ten.
I think this is a great pick, JD. I think this is –
I don't know how I feel good about you saying that because we're, you like it for you. You feel like good for me or for you,
Both. I think both. I think this is – no, it's interesting because I think this is a better fit for the SEC. Like, I think – like you mentioned, I think the North Carolina brand is just like the sleeping giant of college sports right now. They're so successful across all their sports. You talk about field hockey, lacrosse, basketball. If they could get it there in football, man, I think that would take them to another level. And what better conference to take you to another level than the SEC that can seemingly elevate any team into more of a football program. And I think they could be a good fit for you and really get it done. You have Michael Jordan, man. You have the best basketball player of all time. Some think I'm a LeBron guy. But I think that having just that kind of athlete, that kind of star power, that kind of activation you can get from a pocket standpoint, we're starting to see it now with Bill Belichick. Lord knows if it's going to work or not. But I think you're in a good spot here, and it puts me – there's now that was in my one of my top prospects.
Okay.
The four top teams on my big board are crossed off. I don't know if UNC would have been the best fit for my league. Closest school is probably Maryland, I think, when we're talking about my map here. But I'm stuck between two. This is a tough one. I have two teams I love, and again, I feel the same way you probably feel. If you take one, I don't want you taking the other. I'm going to go bold here. We're going to try to take another state that isn't represented just yet in the Big Ten, but now it is. SMU, welcome to the Big Ten. We're taking them. We have no teams in the state of Texas. Now we have a Big Ten team in the state of Texas. And I think financially this is an interesting deal too, because this is a team that is currently paying to be in the ACC pretty much. We upgraded them to a better conference. Lord knows what that means for us financially. We'll probably be able to see eye to eye on a deal there as well pretty easily, seeing that they're doing things. This is, again, a fan base in a school that's been itching, begging, crawling to be in the Power Four. Now they are there. We're going to take them up another level. And now we have a team in the state of Texas who can maybe be kind of our home base, the central most point of our league that now goes from Los Angeles to Texas to Florida and, of course, everything in the Midwest and up north. So give me SMU. Welcome to the Big Ten.
It's a great pick. I don't know if I could have pulled the trigger there because I have two Texas schools, but if you hadn't picked them,
it was a positional need.
I might have done it, man. Positional need. And that's what it's about. It's best available versus positional need. And I think you probably got both if we're going to be real. I mean, also the trend to have SMU with all the money. They just played for a conference title their first year in the ACC. There's a lot to like about SMU. Also, who's to say that SMU isn't in one of those conferences? Who's to say that SMU isn't in one of the Big Ten or the SEC if they don't have the death penalty? Like, I don't know how that whole thing would have shaken out, but SMU was one of those it schools in college football before all those things went down over there in Highland Park territory. So I like that pick, Cato. There's some big money now in both these conferences. I mean, SMU, Miami, Florida State, big brands. I think we're drafting in the correct order, to be real. I don't know if it'll shake out this way, but I think we're drafting in the way that will ultimately benefit the conference as well as the schools.
I think these are some blue chip prospects, I think, as far as if the ACC did end up RIPing, I think that these are probably the five programs that you really want if you're in these leagues, I think, geography aside.
No, I don't disagree. I mean, okay, so speaking of geography, I just crossed off my next pick, and I'm excited what this could mean for this school on a recruiting level. I'm taking Georgia Tech to join the SEC. Now, I'm taking Georgia Tech to rejoin the SEC, baby. Georgia Tech originally was in the SEC when it was originally founded, I believe. It's the unofficial capital of the South, man. You tell me the school in Atlanta that is consistently just rated by SEC schools can't bow up a little bit with that SEC logo now on their helmet, and hopefully you would imagine a little bit more money in their pockets to go do some damage in the city of Atlanta and grab some top talent. I mean, I love what Brent Key is doing there. I hope he's there when I get this school in my conference. No idea what it means for basketball. No idea what it means for any other sport. But I will say this, Georgia Tech, welcome to the SEC. Nay, welcome back to the SEC, back like you never left. Yellow Jackets, again, the unofficial capital of the South in Atlanta, stays in the Southern Conference. And welcome to the SEC, Georgia Tech.
JD, you could have picked this 6th. This was not in the plans here, man.
We had a good eval on the guy.
They weren't on my big board. Just not on my big board.
And I honestly, too, like it would have been weird for Georgia Tech. Not that weird because I guess the academic level would have been a fit for the Big Ten, but Georgia Tech in the Big Ten, which would have been like toothpaste and orange juice. It's like the Big Ten jingle or the CBS jingle with the Big Ten. It would have felt, we would have gotten used to it, but I think it makes sense they weren't on your board. It would have been malpractice, I think, for me to not take a Georgia Tech.
Fair.
Hurts my ego a little bit. I could have taken them later.
Definitely could have.
But hey, I mean, I think who's another great reach in draft history? Bruce Irving, I think, was a reach by the Raiders or the Seahawks when he got drafted. I think he did pretty well for them in the NFL.
All I'm saying is that Georgia Tech game this year, if that was a conference game, I just imagine how much more juice that would have been. I mean, would we get 8-9 overtimes out there? So I do like you taking those rivalries and bringing them home. So you have a couple opportunities to do that as well moving forward here. But Georgia Tech wouldn't have been my pick there at 3.
Okay. Who is so we each have 3 picks. We're halfway through the draft on both sides. Who are you taking at 4?
We'll go a little bit more rapid fire here, and I think when you look, again, regionally, we're adding another team from the great state of California to the Big Ten. Give me Stanford. Give me the Stanford Cardinal.
Wow, okay.
This is a program, man. It was a shame that they were kind of left in the dust, I think. In the Pac-12, they were kind of one of the last schools that was kind of scrambling when things went south. But this is Stanford, man. This is a team that is regularly good across all sports. A ton of Olympians. We have Tiger Woods representatives. We have Christian McCaffrey, Andrew Luck, new general manager of the football program. I think this school is an absolute mainstay. It's an iconic brand, and I think it's another program that's going to be even more activated, I think, in the future when you look at NIL. No one, I think, is really worried about Stanford. They've taken their lumps on the football field recently here. They're in kind of a weird just time of their timeline when you look athletically as far as moving to the ACC and not making that much sense. Welcome to the Big Ten. We have USC and UCLA here. It's a lot more comfortable for y'all. We have Oregon and Washington, some familiar faces for you on the West Coast. So I'm just going to bolster up the West Coast a little bit more, go with Stanford here. And I think this is just, again, a fantastic brand. I think a top maybe 3-4 brand in the ACC right now when you talk about just overall college athletics right now.
Whenever I see those like NCAA commercials where they're racing for like, I forget what the award's even called, but they're racing for like the most points or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Cup. Yeah.
Capital One Cup. Stanford's always top 3. So a lot of Capital One Cups come into the Big Ten. Again, like you said, some familiar faces on the West Coast. Okay, that's a good pick, man. I'm gonna take an angle here that is purely athletic and purely the brand, and I don't know how much we're gonna get from this from a resources perspective. I think they're in the game a good amount on the NIL level. I think Louisville, given the activation of the SEC. That's going to make the Kentucky game a lot of fun. Basketball is going to be awesome. Jeff Brom, the Brom squad, is going to make the SEC a little bit on their heels, I think, with the way they're throwing the football downfield. So we'll take Louisville. We'll add them in. It's a good ad, I think, for football. It's a great ad for basketball, and I will feel tremendous about adding another school in the state of Kentucky to the SEC. Louisville, welcome. We're glad you're here.
That one hurts. That was my next pick on the board. And I was really hoping you wouldn't be able to yet again take another rivalry and just put it right into the fold. So I got to give you your props there.
I'll take it.
They have a big budget over there, a great history, I think, across sports. I mean, you have a Lamar Jackson,
Adidas money,
Patino. Like Louisville is going to be in the fight in the future. And I think that's an excellent fit geographically, along with just in general for the SEC. I'd be curious to see if that move happened in the future. Now you put me in a tough spot, man. Like, just thinking out loud here, like, I could take Duke and like take that rivalry from you, so y'all just don't have all of the best rivalries, in the sport. But I don't have really a flag planted in North Carolina. I feel like I'm comfortable giving you that territory, especially on the football field. There's a couple other schools here. I'm going to go with a little bit of curveball here, just to kind of go with your Georgia Tech curveball that we didn't see coming. Give me Pitt, man. Pitt
Oh,
is
interesting.
we're in the Northeast. We have some schools
Interesting.
there. We're going to add them to the fold. Not a lot of people know this. One of 5 programs that has multiple championships in football and in basketball is Pitt. Long history there. There's a lot of good things going for Pitt, and I think this is just a great geographical fit as well. People are saying, oh, you're going to Florida, you're going back to Cali, you're going to Texas. We're still the Big Ten. We can still do what we have to do as far as being in the Midwest, the Northeast. So give me Pitt. I think this is a great fit across all sports. They have like 19 varsity sports over there, kind of similar to a Stanford, where it's just might not be a direct football move. My first 3 picks were very, very direct football money moves. I think my last 2 are more geographical picks that make sense and just overall programs, if you will, that might fit the Big Ten. So give me Pitt.
That's a good pick. I didn't see that one coming, but when you say it out loud, that's a good pick. That's a very good pick.
Thanks, man.
I'm going to stay in the academic lane. You just alluded to it. I'm going to double down on it. When I heard about the alleged Darian Mensah deal, I'm like, okay, Duke's playing ball now.
They are.
Duke's playing ball. So I'm going to add Duke, and I'm looking at my roster here in my draft class. A lot of academic juice. So we'll take it. North Carolina, Georgia Tech.
A lot of basketball juice.
A lot of basketball. I mean, I guess we're just corking the bad in basketball unintentionally, and we'll do that, I suppose. The UNC-Duke rivalry just gets amplified by throwing some SEC logos on there. We'll take Duke to our conference. We'll add some more juice to the Carolinas now, as we now have Clemson, North Carolina, Duke, and South Carolina all in our conference. Big money, mo problems, and it just means mo. So we'll take Duke, and we'll add them to the SEC. And I'm going to bank on the Darian Mensah money being a little bit of an Easter egg here, or a little bit of a breadcrumb that eventually leads to hopefully more investment from Duke on the football side. I'm all about it.
Quietly a 9-10 win team, I believe, last year under Manny Diaz. Things are going up for them. I think Duke's going to be in a good spot here in the future, and even better spot hypothetically in the SEC. That leaves me with my last pick, and there's a lot of places I could go here, and they all seem kind of not lateral, but very similar, and you would take them for different reasons. Just to talk out loud here, like Virginia Tech's obviously a program that has a ton of history, and
sure,
another one that feels like isn't quite as activated as far as what their potential is on the NIL front and just what they can be. Lane Stadium's one of the best environments, obviously, in the country. I think Syracuse would be a great geographical fit for me. You have a little rivalry with Rutgers, potentially.
Broadcasting school.
Basketball. Oh, just academically, I think it'd be a great fit as well. And then you have Virginia, which would add some basketball juice, winning a national title recently. And low-key, one of the bigger budgets across the country. If you look in the books, they can handle business over there. I think between all of those, I can't let you have all the basketball. Give me Virginia. Virginia will be my last pick here. It's a weird pick from a football standpoint. People are probably like, what? Like, this is a football program that doesn't quite make sense right now with the Big Ten. Listen, you don't want every team in your conference to be super dominant, right? Someone's got to lose these games. Virginia will probably take their lumps here. But I think outside of football, this will be a good money pick for us geographically. We can go up to Maryland, super quick trip. Rutgers, Penn State wouldn't be too far for the guys. So give me Virginia to round it out. I didn't think they were going to pick them at all. Honestly, they're at the bottom of my board. But the more I talked out loud, the more it just made sense to me. So give me Virginia.
Dude, sneaky big brand. Sneaky big
very
brand.
Quietly. Very, very quietly.
Very hush hush. That's a good draft by you, man.
Thanks, man.
It's a great draft by you. We'll recap the classes here as soon as I make this last pick. But you mentioned it. I'm taking Vatech. I'm taking Vatech. I couldn't live with myself if Virginia Tech was still on the board here when we got through 6 rounds of this thing. This is a football brand thing. This is a brand in the South kind of thing. I think Vatech actually has a lot more juice in the Southeast than maybe some folks even realize. We get Enter Sandman now in the SEC. You got Florida on one sideline as Enter Sandman is rolling, or Alabama or whoever, and that's going to be just absolutely awesome.
Maybe I messed up. That actually does sound hype.
It's gonna be sick, right?
It's gonna be kind of cool. I wish I would have had that.
It's gonna be kind of cool. I think Virginia fits well in the Big Ten, though. I
think it's a good fit. I think it's good that we have a rivalry across the Big Ten and the SEC now, though, which we don't have a lot of here. If you look across right now in this future conference, I think it's good that we have one that's kind of we're staring across each other. Virginia Tech. That'll be good. But yeah, you bringing up Enter Sandman. If you would have mentioned Michael Vick as alum, I probably would have been like, you know what, might have picked the wrong team there. But I think we're looking good right now.
That was what I was gonna say. This is a play in hopes that once Mike Vick has a couple of big-time seasons at Norfolk, takes his talents back home, Mike Vick, the new head coach of the Virginia Tech Hokies, and call it 2031.
Maybe coach Tyrod Taylor.
Hey, I'm here for it. I'm all the way here for it.
Who knows?
All the way here for it. That's great stuff, man. So to recap it, Cato's Big Ten will consist of the existing Big Ten. Plus, Florida State, Miami, SMU, Pitt, Stanford, Virginia. Stacked, dude. That's stacked. You might have won this draft.
I like it.
You might have won this draft. I'm not going to lie to you.
Top heavy.
I'm not going to lie to you at all. We did some work to try and up the basketball and the GPAs across the SEC. Look at the average. We got Duke, Louisville, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, Clemson, and Virginia Tech. I feel good about that draft. I'm not going to say that I won the draft, but I feel good about it. And I do think that some of the brands we added there, though, to that conference diversifies the portfolio a little bit. But overall, man, I feel good about that. I wouldn't be upset if that's how it looked at the end of the day. I wouldn't be upset if those were again, there's more teams in the SEC, obviously. This is not a 4-hour show, so we're not going to draft the whole ACC. But I think that's probably a good split. Like I wouldn't hate if that was how it looked at the end of the realignment, dominoes falling.
Yeah, again, I think it's going to be an interesting thing to see how picky the SEC is. Like, I think across the board, as far as like a brand power standpoint, there's not too many teams here that they're just going to be rushing to add to the conference. I think Greg Sankey takes quality over quantity, I think, right now, and it'll be interesting to see if this does shake out in the next couple of years, what they decide to take, and if the Big Ten maybe goes in the route of my play, which is just continental domination and just getting as many Infinity Stones as we can and putting our roots down in Florida and Texas and get another big brand like Stanford in the fold. So we'll see, man. I think it's a fun exercise, and I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out and which of these schools kind of has priority and the most money's on their head when it comes down to it. Big
Ten worldwide. Wide. Investors? Possibly you.
Prestige worldwide, Big Ten worldwide, whatever you want to call it. We are Caden Petiti is happy with his roster.
Cato Petiti.
Right now.
It's a good draft,
and JD
man.
Sankey.
JD Sankey and Cato Petiti. That's a good. Hey, has a nice ring to it. So if either of those commissioners are watching and want a little bit of help, selecting your future teams in your conference,
You've got to
I believe the DMs are open on both the social media platforms.